Something I've been wanting to do more of on this channel is take a look at notoriously bad or otherwise mid games and give them a fair second chance. Try to see if they have any redeeming qualities. After the hype fades and the price goes down, is there any enjoyment to be found? Today we have a doozy, a game that's been considered by some to be one of the worst and most disappointing games ever, at least in the past few years. Balan Wonderworld. Balan Wonderworld seemed to have a lot going for it. Its production was led by Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima, two of the original creators of Sonic the Hedgehog and Nights into Dreams. Two Sega veterans and legends of the industry working under the banner of Square Enix. Development was handled by Arzest, who had a respectable history working with Nintendo and Mistwalker, so I was excited when I first heard about it. But things happened. Bad business choices, pressure from Square Enix, Yuji Naka being fired for his behavior 6 months before the game's release. I'll skip the details, but it had a very troubled development cycle, and it sounds like even the people who worked on the game were not happy with the finished product. It was panned upon release, and you know the rest. But is it really that bad? Let's check it out. At first glance, you might think this is a spin-off of Nights into Dreams. It's got that signature art style and some similarities here and there. You play as a boy or girl who stumbles into the whimsical and theatrical world of, Wonderworld, guided by Balan, sort of an eccentric showman type of character. The game plays out as a very simple collect-a-thon platformer. You'll explore a variety of different stages, searching for gold statues that are required to unlock new levels. Each stage introduces new costumes for your character to equip, with each costume granting you a special ability. Combat is very minimal. I only played through the first few chapters out of 12, but aside from the incredibly easy boss fights at the end of each chapter, there were only a few handfuls of weak enemies strewn across each stage. They can generally be defeated by jumping on them or by using a costume ability. Apparently the game has some sort of adaptive difficulty, but I was not taking any damage. I think I was doing pretty well, and no, it was still super easy. The only times I died were when I accidentally jumped off a cliff. And in these cases I just lost my current costume and respawned. No big deal. It kind of felt like I couldn't take damage even if I tried sometimes, though the enemies did start to get a little more varied and interesting by the third chapter. The game does a few things well. I enjoyed the character and environmental designs, as I mentioned earlier. The music was nice and fitting too. There are 80 different costumes throughout the game, with each one granting a unique ability, so this is a lot of content. That's pretty ambitious. The way it works is that you can only hold 3 costumes at a time, but there are checkpoints throughout each stage that let you kind of go into your wardrobe and choose which ones you want to equip out of the ones you've discovered. This allows for some freedom and experimentation, which is pretty cool. And though I didn't get to try it out myself, the game does support 2-player couch co-op, which is always a welcome feature in my book. So those are some of the positive aspects of the game. As for its shortcomings, there are quite a few. Overall though, it's just bland. From what I played, there was no real challenge other than finding the collectibles and figuring out which costumes you might need in order to get them. This also means you'll be doing a lot of backtracking, revisiting levels you've already played before you can progress to new levels. Because you'll be unlocking new costumes in later stages, you'll have to use those costumes to reach areas you missed in the earlier stages. Not too different from like a Metroidvania or something, but for me this just wasn't fun enough to really bother. I just wanted to get on to the next world. Not really worth it to me, but to be honest, collect-a-thons have never really been my jam, so. Anyways, another problem is the controls are extremely simplistic, almost to a fault, and some of the costumes take away your ability to jump for some reason, which is not a fun limitation. I also found some of the environments to be unnecessarily restrictive, with invisible walls blocking my way. Sometimes I couldn't even tell where I could and couldn't go. The biggest missed opportunity though might be the Balan sequences, where you find Balan's hat and see him take over the screen, flying through the sky and engaging in combat, only to give you some really dumb quick time events. I would have loved this to be some sort of a flying mini game or something. Balan is the most interesting character in the game, and this is all we get. Press A when the image lines up. Okay, it gets old really fast. Alright, but hear me out. This is a bottom line that I never hear people talking about. I tend to listen to a lot of other grown men and women talk about games. This one just isn't for us. A lot of old school Sega fans like myself were hoping it would be a game for us because we grew up with Sonic and Knights and we still go back and enjoy those games, not only because they're nostalgic comfort games, but because they're still challenging and fun for all ages. But Balan Wonderworld is just so obviously a game for young kids. It didn't take me very long to figure that out as I played it. That might not have been the original intent, as the makers wanted something for all ages, all audiences, something like the Mario games are really good at, which is being engaging and fun for children and adults alike, but that's just not the way this one turned out. I do think that 5-year-old me probably would have loved this game. 30-something-year-old me, not so much. I have no desire to ever play it again. But that's okay, because I'm not the demographic for it. I thought because I like even some of the most simple platform games, and I love the art style of this one and the concept, that this would be a game for me. Again, it's not, and that's okay. I'm not going to rant about how bad it is anymore, and the same way I'm not going to rant about how I don't enjoy most of the Lego games. Now that's an unpopular opinion, they just don't do much for me. So I recognize I'm not the target demographic for this, and I think more reviewers should maybe take that into consideration as well. So if you have young kids, this might be worth picking up to play in co-op, especially since you can find it for dirt cheap most of the time. I don't think I paid more than a few bucks for it on Steam, and I've seen physical copies going for around $5. Otherwise, if you're an adult who likes reasonably challenging games and you don't have the time and patience for a simple collectathon platformer with a lot of backtracking, I'd say give it a pass, play something else. Those are just my thoughts though, and I'd love to hear yours. And if you have any bad game recommendations for me, I'd love to hear about them as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.